Andy Warhol. Every weekday morning from 1976 until his death in 1987, Warhol spoke on the phone to his longtime friend and writing collaborator, Pat Hackett, and related the events of the previous 24 hours. The people he'd seen, the money he'd spent, the gossip he'd heard, the parties he'd attended. Hackett took notes during the calls, which typically lasted 1 to 2 hours, and then typed up the accounts in diary form. The diary was initially kept for tax purposes. Warhol detailed all of his cash expenditures, and the typed pages were later stapled to his weekly receipts. But it became something more, an intimate portrait of an artist rarely given to intimacy. In her introduction to the Andy Warhol Diaries, published in an abridged form in 1989, Hackett describes Warhol's daily routine in the late 70s and 80s. Keeping to his beloved weekday rut was so important to Andy that he veered from it only when he was forced to. After doing the diary with me on the phone, he'd make or take a few phone calls, shower, get dressed, take his cherished Datsuns, Archie and Amos, into the elevator with him, and go from the third floor of his house, where his bedroom was, to the basement kitchen, where he'd have breakfast with his two Filipina housekeepers, sisters Nina and Aurora Bugarin. Then he'd take some copies of Interview under his arm and go out shopping for a few hours, usually along Madison Avenue, then in the auction houses, the jewelry district around 47th Street, and the village antique shops. He'd pass out the magazine to shopkeepers in the hopes that they would decide to advertise, and to fans who recognized him in the street and stopped him. He always felt good having something to give them. He'd get into the office between 1 and 3 o'clock, depending on whether or not there was a business advertising lunch or not. Upon arrival, he'd reach into his pocket or his boot for some cash and send one of the kids out to Brownies down the block for snacks. Then, while he was drinking his carrot juice or tea, he'd check the appointment books for that afternoon and night's events, return calls, and take some of the calls that came in as he was standing there. He would also open the stacks of mail he got every day, deciding just which letters, invitations, gifts, and magazines to drop into a time capsule, meaning one of the hundreds 10 by 18 by 14-inch brown cardboard boxes, each of which would be sealed, dated, and put into storage and instantly replaced with an identical cardboard box. Less than 1% of the items he was constantly being sent or given did he keep for himself or give away. All the rest were for the box. Things he considered interesting, which to Andy, who was interested in everything, meant literally everything. He'd stay in the main reception area for an hour or two talking to people around the office about their love lives, diets, and where they'd gone the night before. Then he'd move to the sunny window ledge by the phones and read the day's newspapers, leaf through magazine, take a few more random phone calls, and talk a little business with Fred and Vincent, Hughes and Fremont, Warhol's manager and general office manager. Eventually, he'd go to his working area in the back part of the loft near the freight elevator, and there he would paint, draw, cut, move images around until the end of the day, when he would sit down with Vincent and pay bills and talk on the phone to friends, locking in the night's itinerary. Between 6 and 7 o'clock, once the rush hour traffic was over, he'd walk over to Park Avenue and get a cab uptown. He'd spend a few minutes at home doing what he called gluing, washing his face, adjusting the silver hair that was his trademark, and maybe changing his clothes, but only if it was an especially heavy evening. Then he'd check to make sure there was film in his instant camera. From the mid 60s to mid 70s, Andy was notorious for endlessly tape recording his friends. But by the 70s, he's gotten bored with random taping and usually would record people only for a specific reason. That is, if he felt he could use what they said as dialogue for a play or movie script. Then he'd leave for the night, sometimes to multiple dinners and parties, sometimes just to an early movie and dinner. But no matter how late he stayed out, he was always ready for the diary again the next morning. Oh, hello there. I didn't see you guys come in. Welcome to Bitcoin Talk Show. Just reading a little of Daily Rituals. I was reading about Andy Andy Warhol, not Andy Kaufman or Andy Hoffman, but Andy Warhol. And what incredible detail we were able to get there about Andy's life. Most of the sections in this book aren't so long, so I wasn't expecting it, but I just went with it because it was so interesting to see what Andy Warhol did every day and how part of being an artist is establishing this routine so that you control your time because you're your own boss when you're an artist. When you're making something on your own, something that you desire to make, something that no one's forcing you to make, doesn't have a necessarily a commercial value to it, isn't trying to get you anything, art for art's sake, art's for human expression state, whatever Andy was trying to express, copy machines, multiplicity, variety, replication, all those things and more on today's Bitcoin Talk Show. Today is Friday, August 24th, 2018. My name is Thomas Hunt, and here's what's happening today in Bitcoin. The price of Bitcoin is even, down just 0.19% in the last 24 hours, with a last of 6,515, a high of 6,564, and a low of 6,387. That's $1 for 15,359 Satoshis. That's very close to the 15,000 Satoshi barrier. Let's give this wheel a spin. Here we go. Here we go. And the top 10 altcoins sorted by volume against the price of Bitcoin are Ethereum down 1% against Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash down 1%, EOS down 0.75%, Dash down 1.75%, Ripple down 2.5%, Ethereum Classic up 1/4, Litecoin down 1.5%, Zcash down 1.25%, Qtum rounding out the top 10 down 0.5 point against Bitcoin. The top 5 distributed applications, IDEX and Fork Delta, still in the lead. 2 exchanges with more than 1,000 users. Everyone else has less than 1,000. FOMO 3D with 985, Ethereum On, and POW H3D rounding out the top 5 with around 500 users each. Bancor and CryptoKitties also worth mentioning at 400 and 344 users in the last 24 hours. Blocktivity, the most active blockchains. It's still EOS, Steam, and BitShares, followed by Ethereum, never-ending closing, 76,000 unconfirmed transactions, and Bitcoin waiting for a block with 10,999 unconfirmed transactions. As always, you can support the World Crypto Network by donating Bitcoin or crazy altcoins to any of the QR codes on your screen. Remember, we have very little advertising, no in-show advertising yet, and that we're here for you. So if that's different than all of the other media that you consume and all of the other websites that you consume, consider donating or joining our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/WCN, where 32 patrons are donating $239 a month to the World Crypto Network. It almost seems like that number never moves. I wonder why people won't join the Patreon campaign, where you can donate $2 a month or $10 a month to the World Crypto Network. Think of it as subscribing to things that you want to support, like public broadcasting. Public broadcasting is provided for free. Then consumers who enjoy public broadcasting subscribe and support the channel, donating money in exchange for the free content they receive. I wonder how that works. Meanwhile, at the Mad Bitcoins Patreon at patreon.com/madbitcoins, we seem to be going the other direction, with 78 patrons still holding on strong, donating $480 a month, so close to the $500 barrier, but we seem to be sliding the other way. Meanwhile, we still have 0.5253 Bitcoin toward our goal of $1 million on Tallycoin fundraiser, where no one has donated since the 21st. That's 3 days. And now, taking a look at yesterday's shows here on the World Crypto Network, we had one show. It was Thursday morning Bitcoin Talk Show. You were probably there in the chat. We're still struggling to get over 61,000 subscribers. We have 60,875, a mere 125 subscribers between us and 61,000 subscribers. Be sure to click that bell to get notified by every video. People in the chat are saying the stream doesn't load on Chrome. Maybe there's something wrong with your internet connection. 80 other people are here and they're not complaining. Be sure to give us a thumbs up and a share so that more people can find this show. So far, 80 people have found this show live. That's amazing. You'd think there'd be 80 thumbs up. I don't even want to look, but I know there's not 80 thumbs up. Let's try to get 40 thumbs up. Let's get some thumbs up going. And now, everyone's favorite part of the show, yesterday's comments. Yesterday's comments. We got 132 likes yesterday. That was good for 1,383 views. I can tell you the likes have been going up lately. What you're doing is helping. We're getting, instead of just 100 likes, we're getting more like 130, 160 likes. So the likes are working. Let's keep the likes coming. Let's see what's going on in yesterday's comments. B. Elduayan included timestamps. Thank you so much for including timestamps with your comments. When you do this, you're helping create the World Crypto Network archive. Your timestamps will help people find parts of this episode that interest them in the future, because they'll be able to text search, find your timestamp, and then become interested in the video, and maybe even interested in many of the fine videos that we have here on the World Crypto Network. He says America's secret weapon is the green card, and that it's tough that what happens to immigrants in America. He agrees with people being referred to as consumers, not objects, and that it's sick and it's part of this capitalism and the neoliberals, whoever they are. He thinks the best of several systems should be used. He's in favor of mixing things together, and he says that anarchy is an interesting way of going about life. Check out Lucio Uturba, a simple farmer who managed to drive the bankers around the twist. And that does sound like an interesting story. And he also timestamps that Satoshi uses a toupee, in fact, several, depending on the day and who he's meeting with. We had a brief discussion yesterday about what hairstyle would Satoshi Nakamoto have. We agreed in an ideal world he would have a bright green mohawk, but it's much more likely that Satoshi, as a utilitarian, as a simple person looking for solutions, probably has a bald or shaved head. We doubt that he cares about a hairstyle. Charlie LeCamp says Pizzagate is a silly right-wing conspiracy. Pedo networks aren't real, and riding your bicycles through Tajikistan is a good idea because evil doesn't exist and is just a made-up concept by people who aren't open-minded enough. So he's all in on the conspiracy theories, even though there is no basement. There is no basement. King GP says, at 16 minutes in, thank you for the timestamp. Even when you disagree with me, it's always good to leave a timestamp. He says, you mentioned how Dan Larimer left Steemit and BitShares. Well, those are successful, completed working projects. All of his projects are in the top 3 on Blocktivity. So you can't say anything negative about him. Dan is really smart, and I think he's the best developer so far in the crypto game. It's the truth. His projects are doing better, so take it in. I would agree with that. Dan's an interesting creator in the crypto space. He certainly created his own projects, code for printed his own money a couple of times now, and he's doing it again. I'm just not so sure that the new projects aren't designed to feed on the old projects. I've heard rumbles from inside the communities that EOS might be able to replicate a lot of the features of Steemit, and that EOS might be able to replicate a lot of the features of BitShares. So has he left those projects, or is he cannibalizing those projects as part of his new project? Will his new project eat his old projects? And will that change your opinion of him? We'll see. But thank you so much for the comment, King Cheapy. Alan Bilzaboro writes with a timestamp, 2820. You guys are the man. He says, forget about ETFs. The path for Bitcoin should be storing excess value of renewable energy. In his home country of Scotland, they've been waiting 20 years for an absurdly expensive sea transmission cable to sell excess energy from the energy-rich rural communities to industrialized England. The answer to their problems is staring them right in the face. Everyone's a winner, as Bitcoin will also gain from improved decentralization and increased adoption. I definitely agree with Alan there. The ability of Bitcoin to store money or value from energy could really be used at the edges of the network. Apparently, according to his information, places like Scotland, where they have a lot of potential energy, I'm not sure if it's wave energy or solar energy or maybe windmills, probably windmills. They could take this energy, store it in Bitcoin, trade the Bitcoin for something else they need, like food or supplies or maybe more windmills. And this system could increase. Whereas right now, unless you can put the energy into a battery, unless you can send it over a transmission line, it's hard to get the energy from the point of collection, such as a river or a place near the sea that has a lot of wind, something like this, to the place of consumption, to the home. If you convert the energy into Bitcoin, you get the money, which is kind of the same, especially if you're talking about a resource like wind or falling water, which is constantly going anyway. So good comment, Alan. Thanks so much. And thanks for the timestamp. Crypto Carabao disagrees with me. He says, yes, with two world wars and the Cold War, what a period of stability we've had for the past 150 years, according to Thomas. What led to World War II was World War I. What led to World War I was the ability to finance it. There was also all kinds of bogus government gang agreements and alliances throughout history. It didn't stop the biggest mass murders by then. I would agree with him. There were two large scale world wars, but relatively, if you look at human history, they were actually really short. I'm not saying that they weren't incredibly destructive and that with new technologies like the machine gun, the trench, the tank, and the atom bomb, we didn't find great new ways to murder people faster. But relatively speaking, the 20 or 30 years, whatever you want to call it, of World War I and World War II is far less than, say, the Hundred Years' War, just pulling one out there, or the wars that China had for hundreds of years. Also, these wars, especially the Cold War, was a war that was able, people's normal lives were able to go on. They had that 20-year period when during World War I, World War II, where maybe you were affected by war because of rations, because of drafts, because of your family's gone, because of no one's in your community and you have to go work in the rivet factory. So that was a direct effect of war on your life. The people understood that they were constantly at war. The Cold War, while certainly a period of hostility, undoubtedly, allowed people to fight the war by working in a blue jeans factory, fight the war by making a television or making a TV show that then added to the propaganda, which eventually won the war. So I would say the Cold War, relatively good. I would say World War II and one, relatively short. So I would push back against that. And I would also talk about a majority of the people. What percentage of the people are affected by the war? And previous times, like Middle Ages, we're talking no stability. So no one has any stability. Anyone could be stabbed and killed at any time. Your castle could fall, right? That's medieval times. In comparison, you're a worker in the United States working in a blue jeans factory or whatever for the last 100 years, making steel, doing whatever. You're relatively okay. You're not really directly affected by war. Your factory in Detroit, very unlikely to be blown up by the Soviets or by the Germans or anyone, right? Uh, you're not really affected by it. So shout out to IBLB. He says, what's up? He hasn't been able to catch the live stream lately. He misses you guys in the chat. And he says, hodl on and Long Beach out. So great to hear from IBLB in the comments. Remember, if you can't make the chat, you can always leave a comment. Even if you do make the chat, you can always leave a comment. So helps to show YouTube that people watch the show, not just live. So Roy Westberger says, wow, the chat really did break down near the end. So many Trumpsters. Roy says, we're in late stage capitalism. Better said, we're in late stage corporate bureaucratism. Trump, he's just a loose cannon on a ship bumping around and shooting in all directions. Entertaining to watch while hoping that he blasts off something worth blasting. But loose cannons soon break through the bulwarks and fall into the sea, and the damage left behind ain't pretty. Great comment by Roy. You don't have to agree with him, but I respect Roy's right to express his opinion here. Obviously not a fan of Trump personally, but I've told you guys that. Roy says, like number 94 today. Very cool. Very cool. He says, when you say restarting society at 5754 and say that Rand's model is not pragmatic or reasonable. He agrees, but he says jettisoning large chunks of culture may well be a good thing. Society, culture, big buzzwords need refining. And Roy says we should restart culture. So he has an interesting take on Rand and what we've been talking about a lot recently. So that's very cool. Jack Schrader says Trump showed his taxes and gave them to the networks. And when they saw the large amount he paid, they quickly went silent. And sadly, Jack, this isn't true. He hasn't shown his taxes. His taxes would give us a lot of information that we need to know, particularly in the 90s when Trump went bankrupt. Who came along to lend him money? The Trump economic recovery of the 1990s was largely produced by foreign money. We do have the on the record quotes from Donald Trump Jr. saying, "We do a lot of business in Russia." Then we have Donald Trump moving the Miss Universe pageant to Russia a few years ago and saying that he wanted to start a Trump hotel in Russia. So, given the fact that also a Russian what's it called? A friend of Putin, a billionaire type character. Russian guy bought Trump's house for 5 times what it's worth, something like that. So once again, there's just a lot of Russian money floating around out there. And I'm not saying anything about it, but if we had his tax returns, which again is a document of truth, all I can say right now is I have not seen the document of truth. And if he presented the document of truth, we would say, wow, you are totally clean. Or we would say, wow, that's a lot of Russian money. So that's what I think his taxes would show us. And historically, we may get them someday. I don't know. It seems possible. It doesn't seem like he's going to release them. And Survivalist comments on the chat we were having about Chuck Palahniuk yesterday. Chuck said something like, "It's better to be poor and creative than rich and boring." And I agree with that. There's really nothing to be had in riches. It's pretty much all empty. You just buy a bunch of garbage and then you buy more garbage and you spend your time worrying about your garbage. Chuck talked about the different people that he met at parties and that he met people that were just into things. And Joe Rogan agreed with him. He said, "Yeah, I've got this neighbor down the way. I call him Bling Bling." Because every time I meet him, he's like, "Oh, I just got this new stereo and it's got the great speakers, blah, blah, blah." And then he's like, "Oh, we've got this whole I've got this brand new car and it's really fast and all this stuff." And Joe just, there's nothing there. There's nothing to really talk about. And that's what you have to watch out for, is that you don't become boring. And these kind of obsession for wealth can lead you into that empty place where there's really nothing else there. And I think we're seeing it a lot now. A lot of these Ethereum guys, they wanted to be, big ballers and get the millions. And now they've got the millions. And they're like that racing greyhound that's caught the rabbit. You can't get him to race anymore. He knows that rabbit's not real. He'll never race again. It's kind of sad, but it's also kind of curious. What will they do? How will they reinvent themselves? Will they try? Will they succeed? Will they make themselves better? Or will they make themselves worse?
Hey, what's up, Thomas?
Hey, Max.
It's nice to see you again.
How's it going? Welcome to
I'm
the
doing
show.
really well.
You excited today? We've got 3 live shows coming up. We've got Andy Hoffman starting really soon, an interview with Ken Bozak. And then we've got the Bitcoin group coming up later today. It's another big Friday here on the World Crypto Network.
Isn't that amazing? And I might do another show just in between. So let's try to make it 4.
4. Wow, that'd be a lot. Yeah, I know. You know who we're missing? Shem Booth Spain hasn't put up plans to do a show. I wonder if Shem's going to do a show or if he's taking a week off. He got some good feedback to his last show, I thought. He's doing pretty well, improving each week.
Exactly. I like his show. I like his style. It is energetic. He has passion. So absolutely, his show is amazing.
Yeah, the only note I had to give him is just to use the F word a little bit less. I think it means nothing in England. It's like damn, and over here it's like the F word, and people are like, "Oh no, I'm turning this show off." I had a guy in the chat, and I don't even remember what we said yesterday. Although I do remember at one point someone in the chat was like, Oh yeah, I had to put my headphones on. My wife is mad at me. I kind of took that mainly that it was like crypto talk and boring, but maybe we also said some bad words or had some questionable political ideas or something like that. And the commenter in the chat was like, "Oh well, I'm out of here," and I was perfectly fine with that. If you don't want to talk about adult ideas with adult languages in an adult setting, I'm totally fine with you like running away to the hills. So I'm just not going to shy away from that, and I'm not going to back off. I don't remember what we said. I'm sorry if it offended people. I mean, the only thing we got close to offending, we went to some of the darker places of Hal or some of the more sexual places of Hal. But I mean, even that, like, I kind of stopped it. Oh, they're saying it was. Oh, again, we're talking about language. Here's the thing: is that personally, whenever I say anything, I'm always saying it kind of from like an academic point of view, where we are discussing the language. If I ever used a like horrible word in hate, I would feel bad and I would apologize, and there'd be a big thing. But if I use a horrible word in an attempt to understand the human condition, uh, yeah, I'm gonna keep doing that. I'm gonna keep like I mean, like they're saying that the problem was so first of all, we were talking about circle jerks, which is a thing, right? And it's a term and it's a phrase. And sometimes you have to explain a phrase. And oh, that's what a circle jerk is, and it refers to an actual thing. And there's actually things where they say that bad people who have the skull of Geronimo like to get in a circle and jerk together, and that it binds them together into blackmail and into a creepy cult type thing. And that's a circle jerk. But that's not really what it means. It also just means a run around and a waste of time. And yeah, I think we were talking circle jerks, the chat says. And then we said the line that turns out wasn't from Reservoir Dogs. I was wrong. It was from Pulp Fiction. And Harvey Keitel's character, the wolf, who is a brusque man. He is a gangster. He's a
A
fixer. He's
fantastic
probably
character.
absolutely a character, a literary figure. The literary figure says, well, let's not all start sucking each other's dicks just yet. And it's, again, Quentin Tarantino has a beautiful turn of phrase. This is an artful line written on a piece of paper. It's going to be there. It's always going to be part of Pulp Fiction, the Oscar nominated film, a very important part of our culture, I think, Quentin Tarantino.
And
And
in my opinion, one of the best films in the 1990s. It truly is a fantastic movie. And yes, it is strong in both language and content. Absolutely, it is a adult movie. It is not a children's movie. Although many children do watch it and take quite a lot out of it, so it still is a fantastic movie. I think, regardless any age. And it is, as you say, a true piece of art. This is modern art, and this is not something that is merely thrown out there and to see what sticks. But this has purpose. This is not just empty words, but actually deeper artistic meaning on several layers. And you combine that with the entire style of the movie, of course, the set and setting in which it takes place. It is a line that absolutely perfectly fits. It is something that is plausible on how the characters speak and act, and it is also funny because the wolf is such a precise and thoughtful character, and this line is a nice but understandable break in his let's say professional character. And of course, that is hilarious. That is a nice example of a good joke.
yep, he's a nice, fancy man in a suit. You don't expect him to say that. It's the unexpected thing that makes a joke funny. Now, I do have a funny story about Pulp Fiction as we bring it up. I'm known to recite movies. Maybe not so much anymore, but every once in a while I can get in a nice recitation. But I used to do a scene from that movie, and I like it very much. And Quentin Tarantino's in this scene. And the way that our culture has shifted, I won't do that scene anymore. It's the dead N word scene. I will not touch it with a 10-foot pole. Even though most of the time, if there's a word like I'm going to say the Spanish word for black now, negro, that's the Spanish word for black. That word comes up in conversation or in a poem. I'll read that word. It's less offensive than the other word. But in general, as you can see, we're talking about words in an academic style here. If you're offended, certainly I'm not using any of these words in hate. And also, if I read a poem from the time period, especially a poem, you really can't change the words in a poem. Now, even in a poem, I'm afraid of the PC police. I won't say the N word anymore under any circumstances, basically. But if it's in a poem, it's very hard not to read. I think Huck Finn is pretty hard not to read now because of, N word Jim is the character's name and it comes up about 1,000 times. And Mark Twain, not a racist, not at all. Speaking from his time period, Huck Finn, a fantastic book, not heard at all by one of the main characters being called N-word Jim about 1,000 times. That was the time period, and that we have to have the strength to separate that time period from our time period so we can talk about it. And if you guys don't have that strength and you have to run away, there's all kinds of worse things. They used to feed Christians to lions in Roman times. They would throw them in the pen, and the lions generally every single time would eat the Christians. So, I mean, the Aztecs, other people ripped out hearts and had human sacrifices. There's a point in the river, I think it's the Aztecs or the Mayans, where the blood from the human sacrifices would flow, and they got a lot of good soap from that river because of the humans that they sacrificed mixed with the water and became the elements that they were able to create soap out of. Again, this is our history as human beings. We have to discuss it. I'm not saying I'm a fan of human sacrifice. I'm saying it's something that happened. If you're offended that it happened, that's fine. That's a perfectly normal emotional reaction. But if you want to run to the hills and never talk about anything again, I think you're going to be limited as a human being. So I would advise against that.
Absolutely, and I agree in especially your personal choice of not speaking these words, and I do agree that there is a lot of negative connotation and simply negative precedents to use them. So I agree with your personal choice here. Uh, However, I would like to just emphasize that regardless, it is free speech, right? And you can speak whichever words you want to speak. This is something that I cannot dictate to you not to do. This is not my right to restrict you in the words that you utter. They are, of course, just words, and they change within culture, as you stated previously. So, physically forcing someone not to utter words is wrong, in my opinion. Of course, you have the choice to speak against the words that other people speak. And you can speak just as whichever you like to speak, as the other person has a right to. So, of course, you can act against the words that this one person speaks in, defending them or arguing against them. And of course, you have the right to not listen to the words. You have a right to walk away and ignore them. Absolutely. So you can act against the speech of others in either arguing against them or simply ignoring them. And this is your right that you have. But I don't think that it's okay to physically stop people from speaking against anything.
Well, it's tough to say. As you know, rallies and streets for hate kind of pushed the barrier on that one. But I would say, in general, before we talk about free speech, we want to say that you have the right to free speech, but you don't have the right to speech free of consequences. If you say something horrible and you mean it in hate, people are going to react to that. They might not want to go to your shop if they think you're full of hate. They might not want to, be friends with you and stuff. It's a thing. Whereas if you're discussing it in an academic environment, we need to have some kind of a place where we can discuss that. And maybe that place is getting smaller. I heard Joe Rogan and Chuck Palahniuk talk yesterday, and Palahniuk's a writer, kind of writes offensive things. Joe Rogan's a comedian. He thinks his own thoughts. Sometimes they're offensive. And he says, yeah, that the college students now, they just want to get offended by everything and they want to take everything apart and find out why it's bad. Whereas the nightclub audiences, they have a couple of drinks and they're there to laugh and they're having a nice time. So he prefers to talk to the nightclub audiences, which is it's sad for me. I wish that the colleges were like they used to be, more of an open place for ideas. But even then, maybe they were never like that. But I wish they were less like whatever they are now. So.
Absolutely, yes. And, again, agree. There are consequences, of course. There are consequences to any action that we take. And absolutely, there will be consequences to whatever words we utter. Absolutely. And they might be very negative. For example, that the people will no longer do business with us or no longer talk to us. Absolutely, that can happen to whatever we say. And to what you brought up with the rallies on the street, absolutely. If you are on someone else's property, you have to follow their rules. And if the person who owns the street or the yard or the plaza where you're celebrating or demonstrating in, if he says you will not speak of such and such, this is his right to do. It's his property. And if you speak then of such and such, whatever it is, he has a right to physically remove you from that property because it's his, right? What else? If it's your house, you're going to make the rules. Absolutely.
And then we
So
start to get into public property a little bit, where if you're protesting and supporting hate on public property, should we have that there? Should we not have that there? All this kind of stuff. And just as a pushback to people in the chat who say this show shouldn't get moralistic, or it shouldn't get political, or there's certain subjects we shouldn't talk about. I think we're in a unique situation where the Bitcoin people have self-chosen themselves. And we've already decided to be, for lack of a better word, kind of freaks, because we are Bitcoin people and we've separated ourselves from the herd. And I don't think that we should stop there. I think that we should continue discussing difficult political issues in an attempt to understand them, even if we don't agree, and maybe even the better because we don't agree. I mean, I know a lot of my audiences say, oh, you're straw manning the libertarian and all these kind of things. But I want you guys to help me strongman the libertarian. I want you to represent your beliefs. And if I have to ask a question or, take some devil's advocate or something, I'm fine to do that because I think it adds to the discussion. We're always having a discussion here. We're part of a greater human discussion. We're not, great scientists or anything, but we are in the world of history, relatively well trained to be a historian. And this is part of what we're doing. But now I think we want to take a live look into Andy Hoffman and his interview with Ken Bozak. So let's see what's going on over there. Here it is. Oh, no audio at all. Let's try one more try. Mute this site. Site is not muted. Oh, I thought it was going to work. What do you think? What do you think, Max? Did you think it was going to work?
Well, it's Google, so I would just, by chance say no.
I mean, technically, I didn't restart this computer yesterday when I was having that Skype audio problem. Maybe if I quit Skype. Oh, I see. It's muted. Oh, that'll do it. Here we go. Let's try it again. This time for sure.
Crypto consultant.
Oh,
there
yeah.
it is.
It's working.
Taking out their Bcash and giving it as a dividend. They're actually one of the biggest Bitcoin holders in the world. They have like
that it was back
cash dividend.
I thought it was just trading
like that.
Like 10.
Yeah. It is. It's 1-to-1 quote backing, but as you said, it trades at a premium, because a big premium, because there's really no other way to buy it, and that's why everyone's so excited about an ETF. Because right now the only way is to buy this very illiquid fund, which is essentially a closed-end fund, which you have to pay a premium, whereas an ETF is going to be pegged to the price and quote backed by Bitcoin.
Most businesses will be holding Bitcoin not as an investment, but as a hedge against security, because of the malware and ransomware that goes around and asks for Bitcoin for the release of your data. You saw when that happened, the ransomware started to happen pretty big last year. I think it was like 1 out of every 5 European businesses were investing 30,000 or more into Bitcoin just to have in case ransomware were to hit their servers. And Bitcoin.
That's an interesting point by Ken there. He says that companies need to own Bitcoin and hold it so that they can pay off potential ransomware. What do you think about this, Max? Is this a good thing for Bitcoin that everyone has to hold an insurance policy in case you get hacked? Or is it a bad thing for Bitcoin? Do we seem like collection agents is shaking down these businesses?
Oh, that is no. That is fantastic. That is one of the best steps that Bitcoin can take, is be adopted by criminals. That is a perfect sign. That is a sign that it's going to be a fantastic technology. Why? Because criminals are at the edge of the law. They run on very, very, very slim profit margins, and that means that they have to be as efficient as possible. And that's why criminals always use the most advanced technology, always use the tools that make them just this much more marginally better. and criminals were the first to use shoes to run faster away from those that they stole from. Criminals were the first to invent wheels, or use the invented wheel to carry their loot even more efficiently. They were probably the first to use the car to get fast away from people, and use the telephone to communicate, and the internet, of course. Same with Bitcoin. The Silk Road. That's you might say here the unreasonably judged criminals. The people using drugs, which I think is completely okay. They use Bitcoin because it was just a much superior currency, a much superior money, the much superior technology. And same here now with the hackers. Of course they're using Bitcoin. Why? Because it's damn useful. And that's all that it has to be. But that also means that we all can use it because it is such a useful technology.
Max making a strong argument for criminals here. Of course, in the United States, we know that NASCAR, the National Racing Group, was originally invented to bootleg liquor. They would outrun the police because they had faster cars and presumably better drivers. Eventually, these drivers would drive in stock car races, and that became NASCAR. Just like Max said, the internet, especially pornography, many times considered to be in a criminal or a criminal class of people. Pornography, with its need for secure systems to pay with a credit card, with its need for online video and streaming video, really drove the internet forward. We wouldn't have HTTPS without the porn sites, because they were the first ones to take credit cards because they needed it. They had a demand. But let's check in with Andy one more time. Let's get another little bit of Andy Hoffman talking to Ken Bosak. This is live on the World Crypto Network. We have 2 channels right now.
What else is out there getting a lot now? Tron and Verge, because of their weird partnerships with like porn companies and toilet companies.
Everyone's talking about porn today.
Oh God, you just with Tron and Mushroom. It's a Japanese smart toilet. It's like the epitome of shitcoin partnerships. I love it.
Those toilets.
That's hilarious.
They're supposed to be really good. I just didn't know that there was a crypto relationship. But it's funny, again, we talk about the bear market, and I'm going off all the topics because it's a little of everything I want to talk about.
All right, Andy's off the book. Go, Andy.
Look at the Bitcoin dominance right now, and it's been rising this year. I mean, it's nowhere near where it was last year at the highs. I mean, people forget when we got to 20,000 in December, altcoins were crashing, and the dominance got up to 65%. Well, we're just still at 53% today, despite this massive bear market in altcoins, which still goes on, which is why that I'm so bullish in general. I think that investors are giving a lot of credence to what you're talking about the next bull run coming. But when you break it down, again, dominance has to do mostly with a handful of the bigger names. I mean, if you're talking about the micro caps, of course they're doing terrible because they're the last to go. But Ripple, you mentioned, is one of the few top tiers which actually has been performing well as opposed to the other ones. And so I think Wall Street loves Ripple because it's like a corporation, and it is a corporation, and that's why that one seems, in my opinion, to be going first. Whereas now Bcash, we're going to talk about in a second, has its own issues, which are very, very Bcash specific. And then when I see what's going on in the space, the ones that are doing the worst are the platform stocks. Ethereum has been doing absolutely horrible. It's down to 4% of a Bitcoin, and all of those other wannabe platforms, from EOS to Cardano, and that's a whole bunch of them. I forget them.
Oh, I know that. I was in those platform stocks. I did terribly. It was a mess. But what do you think, Max? They've got Tron, which is becoming a literal shitcoin, investing in a Japanese toilet company, according to this. Then we've got Ripple, with like Andy said, the banks like it because it's a bank coin and it's a corporation and it's for banks. Are these going to be the winners? Are these going to come out ahead?
Yes, absolutely. That's what a money should do, is invest in a toilet company. That is the purpose of a money. That is how it should behave. So absolutely.
I remember when Satoshi bought American Standard. He said we're finally going to move the flusher to the other hands. The left-handed people of the world have had enough. We want to flush from the other side. Some kind of big thing. Satoshi's lifelong dream was to own a toilet company.
Exactly.
You know,
Exactly.
most people don't know this, but Satoshi's first name was John. All right. They're also saying in the chat that what's his name? Ken Bozak has a huge dash tattoo on his arm. Oh, some mistakes you just have to live with. I remember when I was going to get a mega coin, feather coin, terra coin, name coin, earth coin tattoo. It was going to be so great. Name coin was going to last forever. $10 a name coin. Easy.
Absolutely, yes. They will all go to the moon, or put otherly, the dollar will just go to shit. So they will all increase. Anything will be better than the U.S. dollar. So in the dollar term, do whatever. You're probably gonna be much more secure. But if you compare it to Bitcoin, well, good luck trying to be better than Bitcoin. I wish you the best, and I support you in your efforts. But good luck. You're gonna need it.
And it's unconfirmed in the chat whether or not Ken Bozak was paid for his Dash tattoo. As you guys know, Dash had that system where you could apply. That girl Amanda applied, and she got some kind of a grant to go support Dash. I don't know how that worked out. I think she got a lot of Dash. I wonder if they made a grant to give Ken his tattoo. Let's support Dash by giving Ken a Dash tattoo. Oh yeah, look, he's got Litecoin, maybe even Bitcoin there. He's got a whole cryptocurrency tattoo sleeve going on. Looks like that's a QR code. I hope it's one of those QR codes you can change. Oh well, people got to make their own choices and decisions, isn't that right, Max? It's a freedom issue. He's free to do what he wants, right?
Exactly, absolutely. His body. Let's, I just, as a suggestion, put one of those little, poop emojis right next to it. So the people know exactly what type of currency it is. But that would just be my artistic choice in presenting a Dash QR code. But
And they're saying in the chat that Amanda had to write a breakup letter to Bitcoin and then shill it on Steemit as part of her conversion to becoming a Dash person. I wonder if Ken had to write a letter when he got his Dash tattoo, some kind of I'm giving up support to Bitcoin. I'm also into Dash. I don't know, some kind of a state of affairs. But we're going to go ahead and open up the phone lines here on the World Crypto Network. So if you'd like to give us a call, let's see, this screen, that screen, the other screen, all the screens. I'm going to open Skype up again. You can give us a call on Skype at World Crypto Network, all one word, or on the phone at 518-600-1949. There it is. It's unmuted. It's restarted. Should be
Tim
ready to go.
Proofer, he asks us if we have some balls and talk about some legit alts. I'm curious. Bring it on.
The people supporting the legit alts never call in. They seem that they don't have the legit phone calls.
I've never met one, so I'm curious to meet the first one who can legitimately defend the strengths of an altcoin.
They don't have the legit phone call.
Oh, you gotta turn your speaker down.
So I'm curious to meet the first one who can. There's the first dollar. Defend the strengths of
Let's see, caller, you gotta turn your speaker down. Talk to us.
Hey, you gotta turn your speaker down. Hey, I'm curious to meet the first one who can.
All right, let's see.
Caller, you gotta.
Oh, he hung up. He didn't turn his speaker down.
No.
But it's always good to test that first. You can call us straight from your phone. Go ahead and pause YouTube. Or if you're going to call us from Skype, it's also good to pause YouTube. I remember YouTube is on a delay. We are a couple minutes behind. So when I say call now, it takes a couple of minutes and then you guys call in. So in the same way, if I say turn your speaker down, it's going to take a little bit for it to get to you, and so on and so forth. But that's pretty normal for a call-in show. This is always the way it is, even at the higher levels. Donahue always saying this. Hello, caller. You're live on the World Crypto Network. Echoing.
Hey, Thomas. This is Dan from Grand Rapids. How are you?
Hey, Dan. How's it going? What's on your mind about Bitcoin today?
Well, so I heard you guys talking about Ken Bozak, and I have to say, I think Ken Bozak is one of the most genuine people in cryptocurrency, and I don't think he's afraid to call a scammer a scammer. Now, he may have ideas that are different, right, and not agree with other people, but I don't think Dash paid him, and two, I don't think I would be worried if they did, because I genuinely think if he thought Dash were trying to scam people, then he would call him out for it. But that's just my little rant on Ken Bozak.
All right, that sounds good. But still, why would you get a Dash tattoo?
Well, I mean, it looks to me like, and I've known these people, is some people don't really need much of an excuse to get a tattoo, right? They just get one because they like getting them and they're fun, and they can I don't know, maybe just they can get some attention for it, you know?
It's the young people. I just don't understand the youth in America.
The youth, that's right. You kids keep off of my lawn.
That's right. That's right.
So yes, and I, I still have some. Actually, I think I donated some Dash to you not too long ago. So you have some Dash.
I'm a Dash holder now. Woo.
But I think too that I got pulled in because I thought, well, they at least have a clever idea, and the clever idea is maybe there is a different way to do governance. And I think it's okay to have a clever idea of a different way to do governance. Now, I've since learned that, Decred has kind of a similar idea of a different way to do governance, and that there was a big pre-mine on Dash, which is somewhat contested, and how long do you hold the children accountable to their sins of their fathers and that stuff, and like, hey, maybe it's a little bit more legitimate. Now, I'm a bit of a Bitcoin maximalist and thinking all that's irrelevant because we really only need one system for payments and transfer of value anyway, so none of that matters. But that being said, I think it's okay for people to have different opinions. But one suggestion that I had for you while I was listening to yesterday's show this morning was, along with all the statistics that you go through, I always like to know what the percentage of SegWit use is. That's the one that I look at frequently.
Very good statistic.
It's totally stuck at 40% right now, it seems like.
Yes, and that is something that we really need to change. Not only do we have to stress the importance of using SegWit for every one of us, just no longer use a wallet that does not support SegWit. If you have a Trezor, a Ledger, a Cold Card, simply upgrade to SegWit. It is already possible. It has been possible since August 2017, over a year ago. If you are on the phone, use the Green Address wallet. Use the Samurai wallet. These wallets, the Samurai already supports BAC32 addresses. They're even more efficient. You can do a huge part in using the system correctly and making sure that it works. This is exactly what self-governance means. We all need to do our part to keep the system whole. And your part is to use the most advanced and most efficient technology that we have so that more people can use it.
And I think that's maybe a narrative that should be pushed more in the community, to say, look, we as users have a responsibility to the network, and as part of that responsibility, we need to be using the most efficient way to transfer value, and that is SegWit. I think I talked to you, Thomas, a few days ago about getting a Lightning network set up, because I feel like as a user of the system as a member of the community, yeah, I'm doing it a lot for selfish reasons because it's something that I'm interested in doing, but also I feel like I have a responsibility to the community because we're trying to establish a culture where we are not waiting for our parents to do stuff for us and make things happen. We need to put our value into a wallet that supports SegWit. We need to get behind and support wallets that support SegWit. We need to set up Lightning nodes that support SegWit because no one else is going to do it for us, and we don't want other people to do it for us. We should want to do it ourselves. And if the stuff that I've been seeing coming out of the Bcash community is, well, the miners should determine whether or not a hard fork happens or an upgrade happens because they're the ones that are running the network. Well, that's the problem, is that they're the ones running the network. We should have full nodes. We should have Lightning Network nodes. And if you're in the position to do it, even if you can't make a profit off a miner, maybe you should have a miner. If like I say, if you're in the, I know that, Tone Vase, he did a whole post where he was trying to set up his miner, and whether he could or not is a different question. But the fact that he's, going, hey, I'm willing to buy a miner and stick it somewhere, not just to make money off it, but to support the network. So I think we need to make a call to the community to go, we have responsibility to maintain this network.
I think that's a great idea, and everyone should support it. I don't know how to, enforce it or how to make it an idea, but maybe something about thinking of people of a certain level of Bitcoiner, like, oh, you're a level 1 Bitcoiner, you've got a wallet. Oh, you're level 2, you've got a hardware wallet. Oh, you're level 3, you're running your own full node. And just that it becomes a social pressure thing where we say, okay, certainly I could save this $300 instead of buying the node. I could save a little bit of electricity. I could save a little bit of bandwidth, but instead I'm going to donate that, $300 or whatever it costs to get a bit seed or whatever it costs to get a Raspberry Pi or to set one of these things up. I think it's got to be plug and play. So I do like this bit seed thing, but they won't write back to me. So I don't know how I feel about promoting it or if it even has a Lightning node, because like right here, there's no Lightning on their page. I don't know how often they update this page. So,
well, and I think even doing something like I know that AWS, their compute, I forget what it's called, AC3 or something like that. Anyway, they have kind of templates. So I could go into anybody with an Amazon account has access to AWS and EC3. That's what it's called. And if I had an EC3 template that I could just say, start up a Lightning node and put my credentials in, and now I will pay, I don't know, 10, 15 bucks a month to have a Lightning node available and online at all times. And guess what? I'm not going to make that money back. And I'm okay with that because I'm paying to support the community. I think I called in a few weeks ago and said, look, people have to understand that nothing is free.
Absolutely, but you can make it much cheaper. So yes, you can host a server. You have to pay monthly for that server, right? On the other hand, what can you do? What is an alternative? Buy a dedicated hardware to run this node, and of course, don't buy a super fast computer, but just simply buy a Raspberry Pi. Costs you $30, a couple of satoshis, not that much. Buy a hard drive with like a terabyte of storage, and you're going to be good to run both a Bitcoin full node and a Lightning node easily. It's going to take you maybe a couple hours to set it up. There might even be a wizard for the Lightning node already. I think so. So it is going to be rather easy, and then you have something for not even $80 that runs you a Bitcoin full node and Lightning node. Plus, you have learned a ton of it because you've actually done the setup. This is fantastic.
And I wish I had the technical expertise, because I'm thinking now that you're talking through that, just like Bitseed, you could almost sell it as a bundle, right?
It already exists.
Yeah, you get your Raspberry Pi, you get your you get your terabyte hard drive, you even get a pre-installed image. You get you get an SD card with your pre-installed Bitcoin and Lightning node. All you got to do is open up your Raspberry Pi, put that thing in, maybe do some config to identify your own personal credentials, kind of thing, and then you're up and running and away you go. And as this conversation goes on, one of the things I think that people need to be appreciative of as well is all of this stuff is coming, right? This is going to get easier and easier and easier. And at some point, you'll go into the DigitalOcean.com site, and you'll select among the templates full Bitcoin node with Lightning, and you'll be good to go.
That sounds like a great thing, and I'd love to see that on Amazon. I'm also going to reach out to Bitseed again. I wrote to them on Twitter. They only have 1,500 followers, so I don't know if my message is getting lost in all of the hubbub that must create. But I'm telling them, hey, Bitseed, talking about you guys on the show. Do you have a Lightning node? Are you still in business? Do you want to sell more nodes? Do you have them on hand? And then I asked my old friend John Light, who used to work with them, John Light, does anyone work here? And we'll see. Maybe I'll even put it.
Is there a contact page on the website?
Let's see. Website, shop, about, blog, resources, contact. Let's see. Oh, yeah, here we go.
Because maybe good old email is actually going to work best.
Let's see. Maybe I can reuse that tweet. Let's see.
Because maybe it's just that somebody's not paying attention to their Twitter feed.
I know. That's probably what it is. But still, I want them to. Oh, look, you get to put in a CAPTCHA. Everybody work on that. There we go. Your message was sent. So there it is. Bam. Bitseed. Thou hast been contacted.
Yeah.
Because I think this is a cool device. I wish it was cheaper. I don't know if it comes with a big hard drive, like you said, and I don't know if this runs a Lightning network interface here. 3 in stock. See, that's exactly what I thought. There's three of them. So even
how long is 3 of them is the question.
This has probably been like this for months and months. So even if I was to promote this thing and we were all going to say, okay, we're going to take our $300 and we're going to get this node thing, there's 3 of them. I can get a bulk discount for 10, 50, or 100. It takes 3 weeks to get delivered. I mean, I like these guys. I want them to be bigger, but I'm just not sure if this is going to work. At this kind of level, we might have to go down to Chris. They're $359.
See, that seems like you can get a Raspberry Pi and a terabyte hard drive for like under 100, right?
I think so. I think that could be the problem here is just maybe making the box, making all this kind of plug and play stuff made it too expensive. I'm actually curious. We might have to go back and watch some old Chris Ellis videos. Chris Ellis used to be all about the Bitcoin nodes, and he was making them for some reason. He got it in his head that he needed to work like a Chinese factory worker, and he would film himself for 8 hours a day making the full nodes. Had a bit of an Andy Warhol quality to it, tying back to this morning's reading. So yeah, we'll have to check this out. I think there's a lot more interest in this, and there should be, because this is, like you said, this is the Bitcoin users being responsible for running their own network, and that we all need to step up and have a part of this. And that if you made money on Bitcoin, it's easy for you to put $300 into it and to plug this little box in and forget about it. And
plus you're supporting good entrepreneurs that actually provide a nice quality service, and you use Bitcoin to pay for it. So that's a really nice trade that you can do. Yes, you have to spend a couple of your precious Bitcoin, but you know what? It's going to a good cause and to a good company. And by the way, I've just posted in the link the just one example, one little explanation on how to run a Lightning node on the Bitcoin on a Raspberry Pi. There are many other explanations like that. Just Google it. You will find nice resources on the GitHubs, nice READMEs, nice tutorials. Yes, it's going to be a bit of work, but eventually you're going to learn how the system functions and how it works. So yes, get in the legwork now and get familiar with it.
And honestly, I don't mind the work. It's just I know that like the reason that I got the Raspberry Pi is so that I could set up a MAME a MAME arcade machine, and I downloaded the ISO. I flashed the SD drive. I stuck it in my Raspberry Pi, and I was up and running and good to go. So I'm just thinking to myself, somebody that's smart enough has got to be able to set that up where it's that easy. Because honestly, I'm not super technical. That was super easy. So yeah, somebody will do it at some point. But if we could just throw an SD card in a Raspberry Pi and stick it on my network, then we're going to get more and more and more adoption, and that'll come for sure.
That sounds like a plan. I think we're going to work on it, and we'll keep talking about it here and keep working towards those AWS implementations, as well as this Lightning Raspberry Pi thing. It'd be great to use Bitseed or someone else. If someone wants to challenge Bitseed and make a new company that makes Raspberry Pis that run the Bitcoin network or whatever, that would be great too. But we're going to check this out. Thanks so much, Dave, for your call. Give us a call anytime.
All right. Bye.
All right.
And by the way, just to continue on this thought, that is actually something that I thought for my German consulting firm, CoinUp Consulting, with a couple friends, where we bring new entrepreneurs and companies onto this network of sound money. One thing that we thought that we could do as a service is simply using or making Bitcoin full nodes on a Raspberry Pi and selling it to those entrepreneurs that will use it to receive Bitcoin. And this is something that they will have to do if they receive any amount of large nominations in Bitcoin. And this is something that we can easily do, because once you've done it once, it's super simple. It's the same commands pretty much every time. It's going to work 90% of the time, every time. So it would be quite easy. And you can sell it pretty much en masse. And, you have, $80 in hardware cost, sell it for 150, $200, of course, in Bitcoin. And you can get your hands on much, much, much more Bitcoin than you started out with. Plus, you're onboarding new entrepreneurs to the community, which is amazing.
That does sound great, Max. And people can call us now at 518-600-1949 or on Skype at World Crypto Network, all one word. We're getting a bit of exciting echo today. Let's see if it's still there. Echo. I know it's only when Max talks. I don't know. Maybe I quit Skype and started Skype again. It's part of the new cruelty from Skype that it now echoes after the call. That makes it more exciting for you. So we're going to give you guys a couple of minutes, see if you guys want to call in right now on Skype at World Crypto Network or at 518-600-1949.
Oh, yeah. Look at how fancy the WCN got with now both the Skype and the real call-in number. So, one step at a time, every little bit counts.
We got the Skype, we got the real call-in number. We're running 2 shows at the same time here. It's all happening right here. It's all happening.
Exactly. That is what the true to the moon looks like. Slow and steady. No pump and dumps.
We didn't even do the news. Let's go back and check out the news. Bitcoin price builds bottom as upward pressure grows from Omkar Godbul at CoinDesk. Let's go straight to the view. Give us both sides. The odds are stacked in favor of a violent, bullish move towards Bitcoin 7,000, the psychological hurdle. The bullish view will be aborted if Bitcoin finds acceptance below the rising trendline support, currently located at 6,432. Bitcoin bears are likely to be emboldened and could push the cryptocurrency below 6,000 if prices see a close below 6,230. So once again, if it goes up, it's going up, and if it's going down, then it's going down. I just saved you guys so much trouble. Looks like we're joined by Blake Anderson. How's it going, Blake? Welcome to the show.
Good. I was going to call through Skype, but then I decided that I would use my white privilege and just come in through a different technological avenue. So I'm really glad to have that. It's working in my favor today.
And now everyone in the chat's going to want that. Everyone's going to want to just jump on the show now. And they actually could if they called us now on Skype at World Crypto Network or at 518-600-1949.
So Blake, you of course are big into the mining scheme, right? And you of course started quite early with that. And I'm interested in what you think about individuals mining with 1 or 2 ASIC chips at their own private house, just for the heck of it.
The mining scheme. Well, that's interesting to call it a scheme. I love proof of work. Somebody was saying on Twitter that it uses the fundamental commodity of the universe, which is energy, and then it proves it turns it into useful work, and that's how we secure the network. And decentralizing mining is definitely something that's pretty important and pretty cool. If you look at the level of decentralization in mining power, it's going up and not down, which is a good sign. And if individuals want to point power at the network to mine, I think that it's a really, really good thing to do in terms of learning what's going on and what you're doing, how the software interacts with the network and with the protocol. It helps you to understand another piece of the system really, really well. In terms of ROI and trying to get your ROI, it's generally better, except for in extremely rare circumstances, to just buy raw Bitcoin and hold it on a long horizon. But the academic value of mining, I think, is still pretty strong. Other than that, I was talking to a miner the other day that was moving into ASIC mining or not ASIC mining, but FPGA mining for other coins. And he was talking about how it's profitable because there's this high barrier to entry. There's not a lot of software to make an FPGA or field programmable gate array that can mine different algorithms than the SHA algorithm that Bitcoin operates on. And that barrier to entry makes it so that you can maybe mine a little bit longer if you have a need to program your own software and basically, drivers and stuff, for lack of a better term, to communicate with the work provision pool and be able to mine. So it's an interesting academic experiment. You learn a lot. Learning is very important. I would recommend that everybody learns as much as they can, but in terms of a strictly financial call, it might be best to avoid it and just to hold raw Bitcoin.
Yeah, we're not so much into home mining anymore, but we think there's a possibility for this home full node thing. That seems like something that the users could do, but once again, you don't get any money for running a full node. Maybe this is a problem with Satoshi's implementation. The incentives aren't properly aligned. He thought that the users would just run the nodes. While we haven't reached a crisis, we're always on the edge of it. And remember, this also ties into the whole Bitcoin Cash Bitmain debate, where they don't want small full nodes. The idea that a normal user could run a full node is not an idea that they support. Craig Wright, fake Satoshi, said very famously that he wants all the nodes to be in server rooms, and he wants them to be giant computers with huge hard drives. And as you know, that would limit the number of places where we could keep Bitcoin nodes. And if you do that, then you can have an easier path to shutting down Bitcoin. And if you can shut down Bitcoin, then it doesn't have censorship resistance, and then it's not a very good money. Like Andreas is always saying, if your money can't buy hookers and blow, what good is your money? And people don't often ask that of cash, because cash, especially the US dollar, is accepted almost everywhere for almost everything. And we don't ever look at that. We say, well, it's because the U.S. government or the full faith and credit of the president. More than that. Hello, caller. You're live on the World Crypto Network. What's your name? Where are you calling from? Echo everywhere. And I quit that. And I quit that. It's got to be.
And what I would further like to add is that it is important because there are no financial incentives to stress the importance and the benefit of running a full node. And I do believe that the people who truly understand Bitcoin will run their own full node, because only if you run a full node, you are truly using the Bitcoin network. And this means that you set your own rules, you verify who else is playing by these rules, and the people who are not playing by these rules, you will kick out. So you are the full judge, jury, and executioner of your money. And that is what it is all about, to being a sovereign of your money. That is the entire mission of Bitcoin. And not only is it that, but you further have increases in privacy. You have increases in, you could say efficiency, plus the most amount of security that you can get, a complete trustless environment. SPVs are fundamentally broken in several ways. They do work, but they are attackable, and a full node is simply not. So Blake, what would you say? What are the importance of running a full node, and how can we incentivize people doing it?
Well, my house is flooding right now, so I want to pump my new altcoin to buy sandbags for my basement, because that's what we really need to be talking about right now. No, running a full node is really, it's something that a lot of people that fully comprehend the protocol, Bitcoin, and what's going on. I mean, you would pretty much be incentivized by your understanding of what's going on to run your full node and to keep things decentralized, to keep a full auditable copy of the blockchain. People who run full nodes were against increasing the block size, because the initial sync time of syncing a node, you don't want to bloat that out. You don't want to have this big barrier to entry to creating the decentralized node infrastructure that the entire thing operates on. And Audio brought up a good point earlier. If you don't want to buy customized application-specific integrated circuit hardware to mine, what you can do is you can use hardware that you already own to run a full node, and then run Lightning on top of it, and then processing Lightning transactions can net you a little bit of money. That way you can make a slow trickle of interest on Bitcoin, and then if you hold that on super long horizons, that should do pretty well.
Oh, absolutely. And interesting about that is that if you put your money into a Lightning node to provide liquidity, you do not take on any third-party risk. You do not have any custodial risk of your money. So in this sense, it is a really pure rate of interest, because it is only locking up your liquidity, but it is not putting it at a certain risk that you usually have when putting up the liquidity of a money.
Well, and you see people that are like, you don't need to run your own node, like it's not important, and that belies almost any understanding of what we're doing here, the philosophy behind the science of what we're trying to build, the expansion of a circle of trustlessness from the bottom up. When people say things like, you don't need to run your own node, it kind of pushes the bounds of not getting it, in my opinion. And you've seen that backlash from several figures that were once prominent, saying things like, you don't need to run your own node, versus people like Chris Ellis, who was aggressively trying to teach people how to run their own full node. There's a big gap, I would say, in the level of understanding what we're engaged in here between those two viewpoints.
And we have lots of Chris Ellis videos here on the World Crypto Network, where you can watch him building Bitcoin full nodes for, 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day, epically long ones. He even had a camera up in the sky so you could see him just like a security monitor to make sure that he was still working and building those nodes. And I'm not sure that's the best way to go about it. It might be better if we had a company that could just produce some cheap full nodes, or like people are saying, maybe an AWS instant that would already be configured that you could just kind of double click on and put $10 in, and then it would run. Something like that with a less input, less work required by the people. But we're going to have to check it out and see what's available and figure out this whole full node thing, huh?
Well, you know, there as soon as you put a pre-installed thing on the hardware, that always introduces security risk, right? Because you cannot trust the person who put
Yeah,
in
but
that
whenever
software.
you ask someone to do something, you create another task for them to do. And if there's enough tasks in front of it, they'll never do it. So,
Exactly, absolutely. I agree with that, and I do think a good way to start without or increasing too much of the trust that you have to put on is putting out a wizard for the Linux kernel, because as far as I know, there still doesn't exist one. And of course, a Raspberry Pi is a perfect hardware to put a Bitcoin full node on, but this only runs Raspbian. So this is open source, good open source software, right? But there still isn't a wizard, a easy one-click shop to install the software. You still have to compile it from source, which is, you know, quite difficult, especially for the layman.
Well, I mean, like things that are worth doing aren't generally easy, and things that are hard to do generally have, you know, reward. So whenever you want to take lots of shortcuts and have something be easy, like when I worked for Wells Fargo as a math-based security project manager, I would have to call other business units, and I would tell them we're increasing security, and they'd be like, "Is it going to be just as easy as before?" And almost by definition, you'd be like, "Well, no, there's going to be more hoops because we're increasing security, and by definition, there's going to need to be certain types of procedural compliance to make sure that you're secure. You can't just not do that." And then people are like, "Well, we don't want to have any security." And it's like, we're a bank. What exactly do you think it is that we do here? Like, we have to be secure. So, I mean, if you want to have Bitcoin be decentralized, if you want to have control over your funds, if you want to combat the legacy monetary system with all of its, you know, downsides, it might be time to study up a little bit and have the wherewithal to be able to understand and put the effort in to remain secure. Because also, once you become your own bank, you're going to want to have security in other ways. You want to dox your wallet information, and so that it becomes non-fungible. If you do something that other people don't like, you want to make it so that your network is secure, that so that somebody doesn't, you know, hack in through your hundreds of thousands of Trojans that you have on your computer because you've never studied computer science or security before. You need to up your security game when you start to hold Bitcoin, especially because it's deflationary and your small holdings will eventually become big holdings. And what was a small target before ends up becoming a big target. This is why you don't allow other people to hold your private keys or store, you know, lots of value, more than $10,000 on an exchange. There are things that you need to learn as you become your own bank, and ignoring those things is not a good idea. It's good to learn it early on, and then to always be sharpening your skills, not to try to learn it after it's too late when you've been incentivized to do some basic risk management after you've, you know, suffered major losses.
and it can be difficult when you're very early in cryptocurrency and someone gives you some and you don't know what to do about it. I know some friends of ours, they probably received very early gifts back in the early days of Bitcoin, you know, 100 Bitcoin, 1,000 Bitcoin, who cares, you know, no big deal. And they had it under a simple, normal password. The password got guessed, the money got taken, and now it's gone. So that can definitely happen to you with Bitcoin. You got to be careful. People are saying in the chat that Chris works for a Swiss company that is making a Bitcoin full node. I'd heard on Twitter that Chris works for a company called Digital Bitbox, and that they make this little hardware wallet right there called a Digital Bitbox. Looks very small, difficult to hold on to, but I guess it's good. And they say that they also make some kind of a full node product. I'm just not seeing that on the website. If there was a way to buy a full node from the company that Chris works for, I'd love to do that. I'd love to support Chris. But we'll just keep checking that out and keeping an eye on it. Let's see what else is going on today. Max, Blake.
Chris is the man. I love Chris to death. I'm excited to see what his company's working on. The other day, I was looking at, you know, cryptographic economenomist type stuff, and I noticed that the sound advice risk indicator is above 2.0. So I made a tweet: stock prices continue to soar 20% year over year, while the U.S. economy is growing less than 3% per year. So this is creating a divergence in, you know, how much can we have, you know, Wall Street and Main Street basically go in opposite directions before it becomes an issue. If anybody's ever seen the movie The Big Short, you kind of know the mortgage and securities crisis that happened in 2008. That was, the bubble of housing and stuff like that. Well, now we're kind of in the everything bubble. So what people are looking for is, when do the prices of speculative instruments and real goods start to disconnect, and how long do we have before there's a pullback in the economy, which starts to pull the rug out of things on a global basis. Black swan events are extremely valuable if you have the ability to be able to see when turmoil is coming. And if there's a lot of capital flight from these countries that goes into Bitcoin, that could be something that would lead to a big pamp that might coincide with the next block halving. So I thought that was a really interesting thing to talk about in terms of things that other people may not be discussing right now, because that's almost kind of news that I put together myself through empirical observation of these different charts.
It doesn't look good for the mainstream economy, though they are celebrating. They've had, I don't know, 20 years of a bull market. They're very happy. They're very excited. But, that's always a good time to take little profits. It's always a good little time to take some off the table.
Yeah, I mean, during a massive uptrend, if you have fiat bills that are coming up, like everybody talks about long horizons, hold Bitcoin on a long horizon and you'll do fine. So you buy Bitcoin, you have a long time before you need to get out of it, so that you don't have to sell when it's in a visceral down pattern, and then you'll be fine. But people don't generally think about the other side, where if you have a lot of savings or a lot of money in Bitcoin and it's way up, to take profits or to put some of it in fiat so that you're ready to pay your bills. That's important too. It's the other side of having a long horizon. When it's up and you've made healthy gains and you know that you're going to have bills and maybe you don't have money coming in, you don't want to be living off of your Bitcoin when it's in a downtrend, because those are losses that you could have avoided otherwise. So I think that an important takeaway from what Thomas is saying is that, take some profits that you are going to need for certain things during these visceral uptimes, especially if you've already had exposure for 3, 4, or 5 years to gains. Don't be greedy and then wait for a visceral downtrend and then have to take money out, because that's just as bad as having a short horizon from the get-go.
I agree with you, Blake, in that you have to take some profits. The question is, though, how do you take them? Because I do not think that it's acceptable to go back into US dollars or euro. Why would I ever go back there? That is just a decrease in quality on so many levels. It just doesn't make any rational sense.
I'm not saying that you can hold it in the USD.
I have two alternatives here, though.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Look, so the first alternative is, of course, to buy something, to buy either a production or consumption good, something that fulfills you, either in producing a future good, or that gives you satisfaction right now. So you could start building a house, right? Or you could, for example, go on a really nice vacation, but do something with these Bitcoin when the price is high. That is how you can exit the market, but not by not by going back into fiat, a inferior currency, but rather by using the currency in exchange. And the other thing would be go into a sound currency, go into gold, go into silver, go into precious metals that are actually fundamentally okay and good in their monetary policy. And here, just as you should own your Bitcoin private keys, you should own your physical gold coins and silver coins. So, physically buy some gold coins, some silver coins, instead of going back into fiat.
Yeah, go ahead, Thomas.
The one thing Max is forgetting here, the reason to go back into fiat, maybe it's different in Germany, is that you need to pay your debts. If the price goes up and if we're at a high point ever again, let's all pay off our credit cards. That sounds great. And then let's also not forget that the house mortgages are also a kind of debt. I kind of forgot at the top. I paid off my credit cards, but I didn't pay off everything else. I bought a watch and some shoes, but I should have bought a house. It's like one of those mistakes. Whoopsie. But yeah, I think we need to get out of debt is a really good thing to do at the top. And I know a lot of people are probably living on credit cards and trying to defer their spending because sometimes Bitcoin rewards you for that. But other times Bitcoin doesn't reward you for that. So if we ever do have another great up, it would all be a great time for us to get out of debt. So
Yeah, definitely. If you're extending your time preference with borrowed money or with anything like that, when you're at all-time highs, or if you're really, really up, I mean, pay down your debts, pay down any loans, pay your mortgage in advance for a while, pay your rent in advance, maybe get that wisdom tooth that's been bothering you extracted during that time so that it doesn't start to become a huge infected nightmare abscess mess while the price is down. Then you have to sell an entire Bitcoin to go and have, surgery in Guadalajara. You want to make sure that you have enough fiat for spending ready to go when your horizons are comfortably concludable. You don't want to be stuck in the middle of a horizon where you have to, losses happen when your horizon expires and the price is down. The price can go down and you don't incur losses unless you sell. And why do people sell when the price is down? It's not because they're stupid. It's not because they're irrational. It's because their horizons dry up.
Well, and also you want to have some on both sides. You want to be in a position where the market goes down and you're still okay. The market goes up and you're still okay. Sometimes you're not in that position and you have to make some sells or some buys to get on the right side of the numbers. If you don't have any cash saved up for when the price goes down, might be a good time to get some cash. You want to make sure you have balance on both sides, right?
Well, the question is, do you really still need cash? It's absolutely not a good store of value. And to be honest, it's not that good of a medium of exchange, other than in physical peer-to-peer transactions, right? In meat space. And the question is, why shouldn't you use Bitcoin? Why don't you use Bitcoin? Because to be honest, if you try using Bitcoin on a day-to-day basis, even for buying your groceries, for paying your barber, for buying your clothes, you would be surprised how easy it is if you show the people what this currency actually is. It's not that we have to sell Bitcoin. Bitcoin is super easy to use and it's a super reliable payment service. And in my opinion, if we just start using Bitcoin for our everyday expenses rather than fiat, yes, you're getting rid of your Bitcoin. But again, if you only have Bitcoin and other sound currencies, why would you not use Bitcoin, right? So, Blake, what do you see on using Bitcoin in everyday transactions?
I think that where you can use it, it's great. You can use GYFT gift cards, and you can use it for some things. But for petrol, for paying taxes, for paying your bills, it's not viable yet in some areas. So wherever you can use Bitcoin, if you can, give Bitcoin to somebody directly to settle a debt, I mean, I think that's great. But I don't think it's viable to try to pay everything in Bitcoin. If you ever get really, really low on fiat and you have lots of Bitcoin and the price is down, I mean, you kind of get this tight squeeze feeling where you're like, well, shit, now I'm going to have to convert something. And it's going to take 3 business days to transfer it. And I'm going to be losing money on it. And that's not a good feeling.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's always a question of what is your personal position and how much more fiat do you have left? How often can you use it? Must you use it? And same of course with your Bitcoin. How many Bitcoins do you have? Do you want to spend them right now? And can you? Because not everyone is in a position to spend Bitcoin on pretty much everything. But again, I encourage you to try, especially if you shop locally. If you go to your local farmer, he is going to take Bitcoin. I'm actually quite sure of that. If you just go show him how it works and tell him, hey, this is money that nobody can take away from you. That's it. And if you show how beautiful this technology is, maybe even show them how Lightning Network works, that would be cool. We might need a bit longer until that is that user friendly. But absolutely, I do think it is viable. I don't only think so, I know it is so, because I experience it every day, and every day I buy something with Bitcoin. If I need something, of course, I don't buy it every day, but I try to live as prudently as possible. But still, it is possible. And I see Guested Nera in the chat talking that he is living. Wait, no, where's the comment that I want to hear? Oh yeah, he says here, I live in meat space 24 hours a day, 3 hours 65 days a year. Where do you live? Are you living your life in cyberspace, Max Hillenbrand? Yes, I am. No, of course, I'm actually an AI. No, of course, yes, you do live your life in meat space, and we should never forget that. But of course, a lot of our purchases more and more move into cyberspace, right? You buy a lot on Amazon. Well, guess what? You can buy stuff on eBay, on an open bazaar, on Craigslist or something. You can buy stuff for Bitcoin up there. Absolutely. Go to Overstock or Purse.io. You can even get stuff on Amazon. And any private website that sells anything will most likely take Bitcoin, especially if you email them before and show them how it works. So in the digital space, absolutely, Bitcoin is much better to use than any fiat form. And in meat space, it's just as easy. Anyone who has a smartphone, anyone who has at least decent internet connection, can receive Bitcoin within 5 minutes. It's actually quite easy to set up. Download a wallet, write down 24 words, press on receive, and that's it. That's all you have to do. So this is something that doesn't take too much of a time, and especially if it's only for small transactions on a not really regular basis, it's good enough to have a phone wallet. So you don't even have to get started with a ledger. Of course, as soon as you move over a couple Satoshis, you should get one of these hardware wallets, a Trezor, Cold Card. But that is enough for now. So I think Thomas is back.
Yep, we're back. Maybe we could see if we can take some phone calls. I saw somebody called earlier. We do have the phone line open. It seemed like Skype was echoing, so we closed Skype for now. So you can call us at 518-600-1949. People are talking in the chat. It says, hello from Maui. I hope you're doing okay there in Maui. I heard bad things about that hurricane. People are trying to get off that island. It's not looking so good out there. Hawaii's had a rough one this year with a volcano and now a hurricane. They said on the news, they said hurricanes don't usually hit Hawaii. It was the first one to hit them in, I think, 50 years. It's been a long time, so we'll have to see how that goes.
Absolutely, yeah. And I would just like to answer here one thing in the chat that Chris Lloyd says. He's talking about all these UTXOs that I'm creating here by actively using Bitcoin. Well, number one, that is what Bitcoin was made for, right? Number two, I'm paying the transaction fee. So this is all the costs I carry. And thirdly, I can use the network as efficiently as I can. So use SegWit. I've been using SegWit since August 2017. It's been possible pretty much from day one on most hardware wallets. And I try to use batching as much as I can. If I am, for example, during my stay at Mises University, all my expenditures I paid for in Bitcoin because a couple of these fellows wanted to have some Bitcoin, so they sold me their fiat to buy the stuff at restaurants, and I gave them Bitcoin in exchange, and they hodl now Bitcoin. I didn't do that every time we went into the restaurant, but rather we just made a list. Second layer. It doesn't have to be as fancy as Lightning Network. Can just be a list because we trust each other somewhat, right? It doesn't have to be too complicated. So I did a list, wrote down like the 20 transactions that we made, who gave whom how much money. Quite simple. At the end of the week, we tallied it up. It's one transaction with a SegWit, one one input, two outputs, and that's it. Doesn't really cost the network too much.
Yep, Max, you're like a live action, real version of that Life on Bitcoin movie they made years ago. I got to see it at the Internet Archive, seems like at least a year, maybe 2 years ago. They still said they were trying to get it out on iTunes and all the other platforms. I think originally, when they started it, they had the dream of getting rich off the movie. And I think eventually they realized that they had just made a documentary and no one gets rich off a documentary. So still a very cool movie, but I just don't know if anyone can see it. But they had all the scenes that you're thinking they had. The young, married, newlywed couple at a gas station begging the gas station owner to take Bitcoin, at a supermarket begging the supermarket owner to take Bitcoin. All of these barriers, I don't think they really work for Bitcoin. I agree you can use Bitcoin as a currency, as Max is saying, but it looks more and more like the first use is going to be a store of value. People who don't have a savings account because they're unbanked, or they've had their savings account taken away from them from overdraft fees and all kinds of other stuff, they might prefer Bitcoin. Also, people who are looking for an investment. We have a lot of people trying to get rich quick in Bitcoin. They might prefer Bitcoin. But just in general, I think it's going to be very hard to use it in a retail space. It's a strange combination of critical mass, right? We need to have it on one side where all the merchants have heard of it and they're all willing to take it. The merchants actually have a unique problem because they need their suppliers to take Bitcoin. If you're going to use, napkins and food, and they have to buy the napkins and food somewhere, and if Bitcoin won't do it, then it's not that great an idea for them to take Bitcoin. It's just a bunch more steps. So that's going to be tough on the merchant side. On the consumer side, you've got all these consumers learning that this is digital gold, and now they don't want to spend it. So I think there's some pretty big obstacles on both sides of the merchant equation. While if you look at the store of value, you say, well, anyone in the world can start a Bitcoin savings account. Doesn't matter how old you are, how young you are. You can have a savings account. You can put some money in there. And if you value your money in Bitcoin, say you had like a 0.02, if you come back tomorrow and check it again, you will have a 0.02. So it's pretty amazing that way. It doesn't have overdraft fees. Oh, I just remember. I think I left the dog outside. No, wait, no.
Oh
Oh, no,
no, the
wait.
puppy.
Oh, no, I left him inside. He's fine. My bad.
Okay,
I
good,
was
good.
going to take him out, but yeah, I almost had to run downstairs. But nah, he's doing fine.
And
But
and
yeah,
I,
what
I
do you
agree
think,
with you,
Max?
Thomas, that store of value is absolutely the first use case of Bitcoin. Absolutely. That is always the first use case of a new money. It has to be a store of value first. And if a bunch of people store it, you can use it as a medium of exchange and later a unit of account. That is how a money emerges. So I agree with you, Thomas, here, absolutely. And to be honest, if you still have some fiat and you have some Bitcoin, it would be quite stupid to give away your precious Bitcoin and hold on to your, well, paper fiat. So, it would be a very rational choice if you hold both fiat and Bitcoin to spend the fiat first, because that is going to lose in value versus the Bitcoin, which is going to go up in value. And this is called Gresham's law. That is exactly what Gresham's law does. And the thing is, this applies to you and it makes sense. It is absolutely rational and profitable for you. But when does this law stop? It stops as soon as you have given away your last almost worthless fiat dollar or euro, the paper money, and you only hold Bitcoin and gold and other sound money. And at that stage, you have no other choice other than use Bitcoin. But you will realize that every time you use Bitcoin, you use something that you have acquired for much cheaper, especially if you cost average, right? You take out all that volatility. And this means that you get 50, 60, 90% sales on everything you buy, because the currency that you purchased was at a much lower purchasing power. And now that you've held on for a couple, quite longer time, it has increased in value. So the stuff that you buy in that sense actually becomes cheaper for you.
I'd agree with that. We'll have to see how it goes, how people adopt Bitcoin. What do you think, Max? Should we take some calls or do a little bit more news, or head towards the end of the show? We are going to do another show later in the day. We've got the Bitcoin group. We didn't really go through too much news today. Looks like Bitcoin made a couple of new highs. It went to 66.37 and it went to 66.10. Now it's sitting at 65.77. Nobody really knows what's up with that, but might have topped out for a little while. We'll see if there's this big green volume spike here. Remember, it is Friday, coming up on Friday afternoon here on the West Coast. So we'll have to see how we go into the weekend. Traditionally a lower volume type show on the weekend, lower volume in the Bitcoin market. I've also heard a couple of rumors and news from the chat. They say that the CFO of the Trump organization has taken immunity, meaning that he will be testifying against Trump in the Trump organization case. Trump organization is accused of, operating illegally as an organization. We've also got this story from the Wall Street Journal. It was meant to be the better Bitcoin. It's down nearly 90%. With faster transactions and lower fees, cryptocurrency, Bitcoin Cash, was conceived as a way to make Bitcoin a mainstream payment tool. And as we were talking about, the fast transactions and the lower fees did nothing to solve the actual problems of merchant adoption. As I displayed to you there, the merchants need money that they can buy things from their suppliers. The individual users are not going to spend a token that they think is going to go up in value. Jihan Wu himself in his slide said that the Bcash token was estimated to be $100,000 a coin within 3 years. Why would you spend a $600, $800, $1,000 coin that's going to be $100,000 in 3 years? But yes, 90% down. 90%.
But isn't it Satoshi's vision? So maybe Satoshi's vision was that Bitcoin will drop in value so much. Oh no, maybe it's all a big conspiracy theory.
Satoshi's vision was designed to make you poor. It took your money. It took your Bcash.
Oh no. Well, it's just so funny that the biggest bag holder in Bcash is Bitmain. So they have lost 90% of their value, which kind of sucks. Plus, you have to remember that they sold their Bitcoin at pretty much the all-time high, right? They sold it when they pumped Bcash and when they, maybe even suppressed Bitcoin in that way. They sold all the way up and all the way down. So quite interesting.
I'm just communicating to the chat, making sure they know that Bitcoin did go down 68%, but Bcash went down 88%. So that's higher. That's more.
Those numbers are clearly higher. Absolutely.
That's more.
That's
commercial use of Bitcoin Cash payments has dropped, says an analytics firm. So they just can't get any good news for that Bitcoin Cash. They are having trouble across the board. Don't bank on a short squeeze, analysts say. They say Bitcoin's trying for consecutive winning weeks. Several of the analysts are now saying Bitcoin might have found the bottom, maybe moving back up. Brian Kelly, he doesn't know anything, but he's always really bullish. You got to like that. He's like, like a flag waving idiot. He's like always waving the flag, but he's an idiot. So he says the Bitcoin ETF approval is likely by February 2019. Which is the deadline that the SEC has to confirm the ETF. So that seems like the new year is going to come in around January 1st. We're keeping an eye on the new year. Generally, it's here January 1st, sometimes January 2nd. But we're going to say that the new year is on schedule to arrive on January 1st. Incredible calendar-based prediction. Max, will I be right? Will the new year arrive on January 1st?
I do not know. It might be that some Black Swan event happens, right? So maybe we go back to the moon calendar, and I don't know. Maybe that would shift the time back to the New Year's Eve time back some couple days. I don't know.
It's funny, they were talking calendars with Neil deGrasse Tyson on the Joe Rogan show, and of course they talk about that time when they switched calendar systems. And you can go back. You used to be able to do this in your PC calendar. You can go back to, I think it's like 1451, and there's a missing week. They advanced the calendars 10 days further. There's 10 days that don't exist. And it's funny because in their computer calendars, when you're making exceptions to the rules and you're adding in leap days and these kind of things, one of the exceptions to the rule is that you have to go back if you really want to have an accurate calendar like Windows and remove those 10 days. Hello, caller. You're live on the World Crypto Network. What's your name and where are you calling from?
Hello, my name is Mustafa. I'm calling from Dayton, Ohio.
Dayton, Ohio. How's it going there, Mustafa?
Mustafa, what's up?
Oh, not much. Hey, Max, how's it going? I'm not sure. Is there somebody else? I'm listening to you guys. I'm not watching the video.
Blake took off. Just me and Max.
Oh, hello, Blake. How's it going?
But yeah, Mustafa, what's on your mind about Bitcoin today?
Well, I was just calling and listening to you guys talk about how I was listening to Max actually say how he's only using Bitcoin like the only form of currency, and you guys are talking about adoption. And I really think that we need more people like Max. to, you know, more people that are from the first world that choose to voluntarily exit the fiat system, as opposed to, you know, people that are forced to exit, like Venezuelans and other countries that just see their currency going to zero, basically, and have no other choice but to use Bitcoin, even if it's against the law and stuff like that. But right now, you know, people that live in first world countries, like, you know, the Western world or whatever, we don't really need Bitcoin, like from, you know, in the present day. We don't really need Bitcoin, right? Your bank works, your credit cards work. You know, we have that full banking options or whatever, and we don't really need Bitcoin. But once you know enough about it, it's your choice whether or not to use it or not. You know, obviously it's your choice to make your life a little bit harder, because a lot of people won't accept Bitcoin, and like Max is saying, you're gonna end up having to waste a lot of time or spend a lot of time explaining what Bitcoin is to people that you're trying to pay, or people that you want to pay you. But that's kind of I believe is our responsibility. If you want this to succeed, which I do believe it will succeed, but if we want it to succeed faster, then it's our responsibility to just say, hey, I am a Bitcoin maximalist and I will not use fiat, you know, unless I absolutely have to, like Max did when he went to Mises. You know, he had to, and the only way he did it is by convincing other people that did not have Bitcoin to buy some of his Bitcoin for fiat, so he can spend that week in Mises. But then going back to hopefully, you know, using Bitcoin only. So what do you guys think?
It must be something about you young people that you have the patience for this. I'm reminded of Derek J. Derek J. Freeman used to be on the show, Peace News Now. He helped me start the Bitcoin talk show. And Derek J. was always a big proponent for paying in Bitcoin. He would tell every waitress and every waiter everywhere we went, every counter person. He was surprised in San Francisco that so few people took Bitcoin. Really, back in New Hampshire, at least in Keene, New Hampshire, it's a big libertarian type place, and a lot of the shops take Bitcoin. Derek's even running a Bitcoin shop in somewhere in New Hampshire, and I think he's become a bit of a bee casher. I hate to report. And that's interesting. But yes, he would say the same things that Max and Mustafa are saying, that you got to put your money where your mouth is, and that he uses this superior currency, and he never liked the government fiat anyway. He's very much a, you know, anti-Federal Reserve, you know, big government kind of person. But what do you think, Max? Should we continue to argue with the stores, try to get them to take it?
Well, Mustafa, great points that you bring up. And Thomas, to your question, I would say yes, absolutely. This is something that is of vital importance because people actually need to use this currency. And even if the merchants, quote unquote, only use it as a store of value, only use it to accept the payments from a few customers and see it as their small savings account, that is a perfect use of Bitcoin. That is how we bring on the next generations of hodlers. So absolutely. And maybe to expand a little on the question if they need Bitcoin. Well, we always say that that the people in Venezuela, that the people in Zimbabwe, in Greece, that they need Bitcoin. Well, guess what? Yes, of course they do. Their currency is inflated to nothing at a daily basis. Yes, absolutely, they need Bitcoin. But you know what? For them, it's already kind of too late. They've already lost pretty much everything, because their government monetary policy was so horrendously violent and aggressive. Guess what? The US system is not that much better. The euro is not that much better. The monetary policy that these two currencies did is even worse than those in Zimbabwe and in Venezuela. So the exact same thing will happen in America, will happen in Europe, all over the place. And this will be not just a isolated thing in a few countries, but it will be global. And do they need Bitcoin? Yes, absolutely. And it is not just it is not too late to get Bitcoin, but it's soon going to be too late. Because if in a couple months or years or decades this entire system comes crashing down, it will be especially harmful for those who are not prepared. And if we can get the people prepared, the sooner they can get their hands on Bitcoin, the better.
Very exciting words from Max there. Mustafa, anything else to add? I think we're heading towards the end of the show.
Not much. I just wanted to say that, you know, try to if you're here in the you know, the Western world, the United States or Western Europe or whatever, and you get paid in fiat, try to convince the people that pay you to pay you in Bitcoin. You know, I've been able to do it with one of the people that I work with. I work with many, and I'm always asking them, and I'm trying, and I think the more people that you can get to see the value of that for them and for, you know, for yourself, they'll pass it on. You know, they'll keep doing it as well. And I don't know. That's really it. That's all I have to say.
All right. Thanks so much, Mustafa, for the call. And one more thing on the getting paid in Bitcoin. You can always try out Bitwage. I think they're still around. They were a company back in the day. Basically, when you get paid, you have the option to send some of your money to checking and some of your money to savings. And what Bitwage would do is they would link your savings account with Bitcoin. So maybe you'd get $1,000 in checking and $200 in savings. They would convert that $200 into Bitcoin and send it to your Bitcoin account. Pretty cool idea. Your company didn't have to agree to use it. It's not like a big change for them. They just have to direct your savings account to this amount, and you can take like 10% of your money or 5%, and you can have your company automatically invest it for you in Bitcoin, thanks to Bitwage. I think they're still around. Not counting on that, but
yeah, fantastic service. Or even better, try to convince your employer to get some Bitcoin himself so that he can give it to you.
And sometimes they could even buy it early and get a good deal on your wages. Other times, not so much. But it's interesting to see the way that it goes in and out with waves and so on and so forth. I still remember the story of the bar in San Francisco where we hold the San Francisco Bitcoin meetups, and we used to pay them in Bitcoin. And they, of course, planned to sell it right away, but they accidentally held on to it, and they accidentally held on to it, and now they're very happy that we paid them in Bitcoin. They welcome us back. The bartender knows your name, brings you your drink right away. It's pretty nice when you pay people in Bitcoin. Sometimes it works out. But Max, anything in closing? I know you said you were going to do another show later today, and we've got the Bitcoin group coming up. But go ahead, Max.
Oh, well, there always so much to talk about in these sessions, and I really do appreciate just hanging out with you all, guys. Not just Thomas, you, of course, live on the show, but all the callers who call in. It's really a pleasure to talk to you, and all the people in the chat. So absolutely, thank you so much. In closing, maybe the importance of not just shilling Bitcoin, not just selling Bitcoin, but actually being earnest and wanting more education rather than sales. Because to be honest, we don't need to sell Bitcoin. Bitcoin works perfectly fine and quote unquote sells itself perfectly fine. All we need to do is show how it works and try to help them on their path to understanding why such a system is not just useful, but extremely valuable. Because after all, it is, and we know that it is, and we can support other people, good-hearted people, in reaching this understanding as well. So be honest. Don't sell any shit coins. Don't get into the charlatanship, but actually try to help people understand why this is so important.
I agree, Max. Thanks so much, and be sure to check out Max's show later in the day here. And we're going to be back for the Bitcoin group, as it says right here, tomorrow at 1:00 p.m. Pacific time. The Bitcoin group with the SEC ETF review, Indiegogo, China crackdown, and Bitmain IPO. But we've changed that one to wasteful banks. We talked about the Bitmain IPO last week. That doesn't mean that we won't bring it up, but it's just not a big enough topic. And we're going to be joined by Blake Anderson, who was just on this show, Gabriel Devine, and Max Hillebrand. It doesn't say there, but Max RSVP'd late, but he will be there for the show later today at 1 o'clock on the West Coast. You can support the World Crypto Network at patreon.com/WCN, where you can subscribe with your credit card so you don't have to spend your Bitcoin to support the World Crypto Network. It's an amazing system we have where, like we say, the credit card system still works pretty good in America. If you want to put $2 on your card, that's $12 a year, or more like $24 a year, I guess, $12 a half year. Not that much to pay to support the World Crypto Network. Also, you could support Mad Bitcoins at the patreon.com/Mad Bitcoins. Chris Lloyd in the chat says, would you consider doing a 24-hour show? Well, I can tell you that historically, whenever you say start a broadcast on Google Hangouts here, it says Google Hangouts will broadcast for 8 hours. So early in the old days, I had to test that out. I had to know what happened when you reached the 8-hour barrier. So we did a couple of 8-hour Hangouts on the World Crypto Network. And I can tell you when you reach the barrier, it says, your Hangout has now ended. Okay. And that's it. There's no reward. There's no celebration. It has been our goal to do more shows and to have more content here on the World Crypto Network. Unfortunately, we've had some setbacks. Some people don't agree with the idea of having a team and working together as a team. We're trying to do that here. And all of these shows are volunteer. This is all a team effort. So if somebody says, like we have Max's, we don't have it right now, but normally we have Max's QR code for the Purism laptop. That would be a donation to Max. If you want to support Andy, go to cryptogoldcentral.com and you can subscribe and you can get all of Andy's background and information that he puts out on the blog. If you want to support Mad Bitcoins, you can go to patreon.com/Mad Bitcoins. So again, it's a volunteer effort here. We're always looking for new volunteers. One of the new things that people are doing is the time stamping. We had Jeremy Sager, who helps us out a lot, time stamping the issues on Bitcoin Group. But we're also looking for really cool quotes, or maybe you want to have a discussion with us. You want to agree or you want to disagree. It's great to include that timestamp so that other people can then come along and join the conversation and listen to it for themselves. And they can say, no, I think he meant this, or I think I take this as that, or, we can have those kind of discussions. But yeah, we would be great to have an 8-hour live show. Ideally, I would just hand this show off to someone else. They would keep the show going. Someone else would come on. They would keep the show going. And we're trying to do this with a call-in function as well. We're still trying to get a server that will work with our call-in function that we could share. But these are just some of the ideas we have here at the World Crypto Network. We'd also like to work on a conference that would be about the normal people, just a normal people conference, and maybe some ideas like WCN Live, or teaching people how to use wallets, how to use hardware wallets, how to trade, these kind of things in the future. But we're running out of time. If you want to help us, you can always DM your email to @MadBitcoins on Twitter. I'll add you to the Slack. Again, it's volunteer. So if you want to volunteer a lot, you could become a superstar. If you want to volunteer a little, still very good. The main key is just to do something every week, or to do something every 2 weeks, to get into a schedule, something that you can repeat. That's the way to do it.
And one tiny thing that I want to throw in, one thing that Nico is doing, who also has appeared here a couple times on the WCN show, is he is working on the biggest Bitcoin focused venue or 2-day event in Finland. It's going to be in Helsinki in November. Let me pull up the exact date. It's called the Consensus Conference. It's on the 22nd and 23rd of November. So look forward to that if you are in Helsinki. Thomas, it was an absolute honor again to be on your show. I'm looking forward to the Bitcoin group later, and see you guys on the next show. Bye-bye.
That's right. We'll be back in just 2 hours or so with the Bitcoin group. So come on right back, the Bitcoin group. Until next time, bye-bye.